Welcome to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. To be effective, suicide prevention needs to be readily available and offer a variety of ways to relate to individuals. Cultural sensitivity is one tool advocates point to as a means to improve outcomes for Native Americans and Alaska Natives. At a time when suicide prevention resources are dwindling, we'll look at what tribes, clinics, and individuals are doing to counter the troubling statistics for Native people. We're talking suicide prevention coming up after the news.
This is National Native News. I'm Antonia Gonzalez. In Alaska, there are a growing number of cases involving young teens in small remote indigenous communities who are sexually exploited online. As KMBA's Rhonda McBride tells us, the FBI believes one North Slope man who was indicted this summer could have other victims.
After FBI investigators arrested Robert Segoven and Wainwright this July for child exploitation, they wanted to be sure the North Slope man didn't have any other victims. In charging documents, they showed evidence of how Segoven, who is 31, used social media chats to badger teenage girls into sending him sexually explicit pictures of themselves. The victims were as young as 12, 13, and 15. Chloe Martin, a spokesperson for the FBI's Alaska field office, says, although this case takes place in one of the most isolated places in the nation, it is not beyond the FBI's reach.
No matter where a child lives, they deserve safety, support, and justice.
Martin says sexual exploitation occurs in large cities and small communities alike, and it helps to end the abuse when victims come forward.
Victims may be eligible for certain services, potentially restitution, and rights under federal and or state law. And of course, all identities of these victims will be kept confidential.
The FBI's Anchorage field office and the North Slope Boroughs Police Department worked together on this case, which came to light last October after a North Slope Borough police officer took a complaint from a 15-year-old girl. She told the officer Segoven had asked for images of her breasts and private parts. In the course of the investigation, he learned that other children had received similar messages and that a 13-year-old had sent Segoven nude photos. The FBI is asking anyone who has information about Segoven's alleged crimes to contact the Anchorage FBI field office or go online at tips.fbi.gov. In Anchorage, I'm Rhonda McBride.
Hundreds of First Nations chiefs recently gathered in Winnipeg for their annual meeting. As Dan Karpenchuk reports, most of the talk was about the impact on their communities of new laws allowing the fast-tracking of major infrastructure projects.
The concerns brought to the Winnipeg meeting focused on how First Nations rights were being challenged by the push by Ottawa to have major projects moved forward. Many chiefs are angry that the new law, Bill C-5, was pushed through with only 7 days to review and comment on it. Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak is the National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations.
The way the Act was introduced has caused concern for many chiefs. This Assembly is an opportunity for chiefs to deliberate and to provide direction moving forward.
But 2 days into the gathering, the chiefs voted down a pitch to include First Nations infrastructure ventures in the government's national plan to fast-track major projects like pipelines and mining of precious metals. The resolutions didn't get the needed 60% support. Some said passing the resolution would have been supporting the federal legislation and could have put their rights in jeopardy. The vice chief of the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations said major project discussions must include Indigenous people because these decisions affect treaty rights by impacting their ability to exercise rights to hunt, fish, trap, and pass on their way of life. More than 600 chiefs from across the country attended the meeting. Other issues on the table included talks on child welfare reform, native policing, health care, the drug crisis, and the lack of proper housing on reserves. For National Native News, I'm Dan Karpenchuk.
And I'm Antonia Gonzalez.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Support by Drummond Woodsum, a full-service law firm whose nationally recognized tribal nations practice provides services to tribal nations and their enterprises and to companies that do business with tribes across the country. More at dwmlaw.com. Skugtash. For more than 40 years, Ramona Farms has revived ancient traditional foods, tepary beans, pinole, polentas, and more, all from store.ramonafarms.com. Ramona Farms supports this show. Omye.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
This is Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. The Ponca Tribe of Nebraska is offering free mental health services that will include therapy and health screenings to tribal members and descendants. The services come at a time when other suicide prevention programs and initiatives are under threat. A crisis line specializing for LGBTQ plus youth shut down. Also, the federal agency that oversees the nation's mental health services, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, is facing deep budget and staff cuts. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is cutting more than a third of the agency's staff. Today on our show, we'll talk with different mental health experts about trying to curb suicide rates during National Suicide Prevention Month. Listeners, you can join us at 1-800-996-2848. Share your comments, share your insights. You can ask questions. Just give us a call. The number is also 1-800-99-NATIVE. A warning, we will be talking about suicide in Native communities today. If you or someone you love is struggling, please call or text the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. That number again, 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Let's now meet today's guests. Joining us from Omaha, Nebraska is Rachel Bogatz. She is the Director of Integrated Care for the Ponca Tribe of Nebraska, and she is Ponca and Omaha. Rachel, hello, and welcome to Native America Calling.
Hello, thank you so much for the introduction. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Also joining us from Omaha, Nebraska is Luann Even. She is the Chief Behavioral Health Officer for the Ponca Tribe of Nebraska. Luann, hello to you as well, and welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Joining us from Washington, D.C. is Stephanie Pasternak. She is Director of State Affairs for National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI. Stephanie, welcome to our show. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Sean. Thanks. So happy to be here.
And in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, we have Kim Ferris. She is the Director of Behavioral Health for the Oklahoma City Indian Clinic. Kim, good morning and welcome to Native America Calling.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and get this conversation started. And I'd like to begin with the two folks we have here from the Ponca Tribe of Nebraska. And Luann, I want to start with you. Why is the Ponca Tribe offering free mental health services this month? Is this something you folks do every year during National Suicide Prevention Month?
We actually offer free mental health services all the time. We offer both substance abuse and mental health therapy and outpatient groups to all Native individuals who are either members of or descending from a federally recognized tribe.
Wonderful. Now tell us more about some of these services that are included with this free mental health service.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 5 different sites, and at each site we have a variety of different therapists with different specialties. So we provide your traditional weekly outpatient mental health therapy. We also offer substance use treatment, and we offer outpatient substance use group. And so anybody who is able to get to our clinic or can even, log in with their phone or a computer has access to mental health care through the Ponca Tribe of Nebraska.
Now, you have worked for the tribe, as I understand it, for several years. Can you talk more about some of the different suicide prevention efforts that the tribe has undertaken during that time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with the tribe for almost 8 years, And suicide prevention and awareness has always been kind of a passion point for me, wanting to reduce that stigma, get people the help that they need. And so some of the things that we offer, we do mental health screenings in a variety of different aspects. We host screenings through our backpack events. We offer mental health screenings in our primary care facilities. And we also just purchased a new app that will allow us to kind of do mental health and substance use screenings on a global scale for anybody who just wants to see, how they're doing, and then they can then refer to our services. So that's one of the ways that we really try to kind of meet people where they're at and get them into services is through that screenings. But we also have a lot of events and programs that offer mental health awareness, mental health education. We have a wonderful youth program that has both group programming and one-on-one mentorship, and they offer a lot of education and prevention through that program. We also offer a weekly talking circle where individuals are able to come in, kind of, be with their community and talk about things that they're going through, and all of those kind of then can trickle into mental health services.
Sounds like a very wide range of comprehensive services that are available, different target audiences, youth, like you mentioned. Do you feel these programs are making a difference? Do you have data that supports that you folks are making some real strides here with regard to suicide prevention?
I do think we're making a difference. I know that in just the 7.5, 8 years that I've been with the tribe, we have seen a influx in the number of people that we're seeing, that we're working with. While that can seem like kind of a double-edged sword, we don't necessarily want to have more people coming in for our services. We are glad that more people are aware of our services and that we're able to meet people where they're at and get them the help they need. We see a lot of benefit in the community, people talking about the services that we offer, and our youth feeling kind of empowered to go out and be leaders and take on different tasks. So I think we're doing a great job and making a huge difference in the community.
Thanks, Luann. Rachel, how about you? How have you seen the Ponca tribe prioritize mental health and suicide in recent years?
So I would say the biggest way I've seen it is with mental health, suicide rates, substance use, all the things. I think it's really important to have also some of those wraparound services. So over the last couple of years, we've really grown our department to kind of help everybody from the bottom up, right? So we have case management and peer support, and as Luann had mentioned, the youth services. So even if you don't really know where to start, we can, get you help with housing, get you help with, recovery support. We can get you help with getting a job, all those types of things. Because I think a lot of those put burdens on people who are already dealing with their own mental health issues.
Now, I also understand that you folks have initiated a hotline. It's a text-based hotline that tribal members can call. It's staffed by tribal members, in fact. Tell us more about that resource.
Do you mean our CHESS program? Is that what you're referring to?
I believe it's called the All Nations Crisis Hotline.
That is not something I think we set up.
I'm sorry.
Great Plains. It's all good. It is a Great Plains national hotline, but it is not from the Ponca tribe specifically. But it is one that people can reach out to, just similar to Crisis Text Line and all the other suicide prevention lines, where they can call and get access to resources and talk to someone on a 24-hour basis.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification, Rachel. What are you hearing from tribal members? What are you hearing from people in the community with regard to these resources and their services? How do they feel? Do they feel they're making a difference?
From what I hear from my own tribal members and just people in our community, I believe we are making a difference. A lot of people talk about the growth of the services. When I've been with the tribe as an employee for 5 years now, and when I first originally started, you did not hear much about our mental health or substance use services. But over the last 5 years, they have grown completely, and I constantly hear people being like, oh, you had mental health, oh, you have substance use. And now we're actually noticed and recognized, and people understand we're there to support them and provide them the resources they need. So it's been awesome being able to see our growth and being able to help more people as we have grown.
All right. Luann, back to you. What are some continued hurdles or challenges that the Ponca tribe faces, and maybe other tribes as well, when dealing with some of these mental health issues we're talking about today?
Absolutely. So I think that some of the challenges that are continuing that have been there for a long time is the general stigma associated with seeking help for mental health, substance use, kind of reaching out. And so one of the things that we're always wanting to do is reduce that stigma, let people know that they're not alone and that a lot of people do experience this. But we see a kind of a twofold stigma within our Native community in that there is a lot of distrust of kind of Western medicine. And so wanting to let our community know that we also meet them where they're at culturally and that we can be a community for them and that they can come and receive help and feel accepted and welcomed and be within their own community. And another hurdle that I think has kind of come up more recently is, funding concerns. I think that a lot of people are probably feeling some constraints with funding and ongoing funding. A lot of what we do is grant funded, and there's been some challenges with that. And so I think that those are some of the biggest hurdles that I see right now.
All right, thank you, Luann. And Rachel, back to you. We heard Luann mention the importance of culturally based programs. Some people might have a distrust of Western medicine. Can you talk a little bit more about the cultural approach that you folks have worked on developing and refining there for the community member?
Yeah, of course. So with our programs, we always try to bring in some cultural components. For instance, our outpatient treatment program, we do follow a very evidence-based practice, but we also bring in a cultural practice as well. So we do Generation Red Road. That focuses a lot on cultural activities, learning about your roots, and how those things can impact your using, impact your recovery, all of that type of stuff. Also, part of our big thing of our youth is teaching them about their own culture. So yes, they do different activities and prevention activities, but it's also about learning about who you are and where you came from. So we try to incorporate into everything. And since we do serve all tribal nations, we try to see what each person and where they want to go with it, because not all tribes have the same traditions and things like that. So we bring in what works for each and every person. So.
All right, mental health professionals from the Ponca tribe of Nebraska, kicking off our conversation here on Native America Calling. It is September, and this is National Suicide Prevention Month. If you have a question, if you'd like to share a comment or a thought or a perspective, you can give us a call. You can do that. Just call 1-800-996-2848. That number is also 1-800-99-NATIVE, and you can share your comments on the air. So give us a call, 1-800-99-NATIVE, and stay with us. We'll be right back. This is Sean Spruce, host of Native America Calling. You can listen in every weekday to hear the only national call-in show from a Native American perspective. We explore topics that range from traditional cultural practices to up-to-the-minute news that affects every American. We hope you can join us for the next Native America Calling.
Support provided by Amerind. Amerind is 100% tribally owned and partners with tribes and their businesses to provide affordable commercial insurance coverage, protect tribal sovereignty, and strengthen Native American communities by helping to keep dollars in Indian country. Information about property, liability, commercial auto, and workers' comp available at Amerind.com. That's AMERIND.com.
Thank you for listening to Native America Calling. We are talking about various suicide prevention efforts around the country. If you would like to share what your community is doing to address suicide, you can do that by calling 1-800-996-2848, 1-800-996-2848. Our next guest, Stephanie Pasternak, joins us from Washington, D.C., where she is the Director of State Affairs for NAMI, which stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And Stephanie, earlier at the top of the show, we mentioned the 988 crisis line as a resource for listeners and for communities. And NAMI actually does work with the 988 crisis line. You help spread awareness. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So at NAMI, we're the nation's largest grassroots mental health nonprofit. And as you mentioned, one of our big areas of work has been advocacy. And since we represent people with mental health conditions and their loved ones, it's been a very high priority of ours to see the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline launched a few years ago. And I've seen firsthand how it saves and changes lives. And we're still advocating for 988 just to move forward and continue with strong funding so it can reach even more people in the years to come.
Stephanie, the crisis line, it used to be a 10-digit number, and then a few years ago it was shortened to just the 988. Do you think that's made a difference, just having a shorter number, less digits that people can tap into a smartphone?
Yes, absolutely. Probably evidenced by the fact that if you asked me to remember the 10-digit number right now that it used to be, I don't think I could tell you, but I can certainly remember 988. And I think that also helps people recognize that, it has that similarity with 911. And that's helped folks understand, 911, you can call for a physical health emergency. But if you're having more of a mental health emergency, 988 is that number to call.
Is there any data with regard to the numbers of Native folks who use the 988 crisis line?
That is a great question. Data is a little difficult. At least the national 988 data is not really broken down by race or ethnicity. But if you go to your state's 988 website, a lot of states are tracking that, and you would be able to find out how many Native callers there are.
Okay, thank you. Now, sadly, we as Native people, we still face higher rates of suicide than other demographics. Stephanie, what efforts, and we heard from the folks there with the Ponca tribe of Nebraska, they've got some really innovative services that they're working on, but what else are you seeing? What other efforts or what types of methodologies present a lot of promise with regard to bringing those rates down?
I think number one is we've been advocating for more culturally competent, culturally appropriate crisis care, including in 988. Also for the support of integrating, traditional healing practices with more modern treatment. Overall connection, just strengthening connection in communities and with families and with trusted, culturally aware providers, and also working with tribal communities as partners, and also in the policy making space.
And speaking of policy, how aware right now do you think the federal government is about suicide rates among Native populations? And what more in terms of investments into resources or programs or other types of services could the government make to lower those numbers?
Great question. I think the federal government is aware of how at risk Native communities are for suicide compared to other communities. At least with the 988 law, that actually came from an act of Congress, and Native Americans were called out as a priority population for the 988 program to focus on serving. And one thing I'd love to see more of too, that's an innovative practice out of Washington State. So anyone can call 988, but Washington State took the extra step to create the first dedicated Native 988 line. It's called the Native and Strong line there. So that is entirely staffed by counselors who are Indigenous. And so essentially, if you're in Washington State, you can call 988, and then there's a prompt to press 4. If you'd like to access that line. As I said, it's the first dedicated Native 988 line, but hopefully not the last.
Yeah, that's interesting. What does it take to create a crisis line? Like if other states or other tribal communities were interested in creating a similar type of resource, can you give us just a general idea of like what type of training, what type of budget, what type of equipment or technology is required to do that?
Yeah, I think more than anything, it takes bringing the right stakeholders together and the right resources. I think you would want to make sure that you're bringing together, the existing 988 contact centers with tribal leadership, with leadership from the nearest state's 988 program, and ask also the contact centers about their technology, because you'd want the transition to be seamless when someone called in and wanted to get to a specialized Indigenous line. But Washington State has proven that it can happen, and also the federal government has made some funds directly available to tribal governments to improve 988 services and other suicide prevention programming.
And Stephanie, for somebody who might be listening to the show right now, they're in a Native community. They could be in the western part of the U.S. They could be in the Pacific Northwest. They could be somewhere along the East Coast. What are some ways that just regular tribal citizens can become involved with suicide prevention in their communities?
I think what you want to do is think about how you can help create safe spaces where folks can share whatever they're going through, whatever their challenges are, speak honestly and openly, and provide access to other resources. More than anything, connection helps to prevent suicide. And also see, maybe, is there a role for you or an organization that you're affiliated with to, convene conversations around mental health and suicide prevention. We're still pretty early into Suicide Prevention Month, so that could be a great conversation to convene and have throughout September.
All right, thanks, Stephanie. And Luann, I want to ask you the same question. Do you ever have tribal members just come to your offices and say, hey, I'd like to help. I'd like to contribute in some way to suicide prevention here in the community. What can I do?
Yeah, so we have a lot of volunteer options within the tribes. You can help with some of our programming. But one way that I like to tell people that if they want to get involved, to volunteer with our local chapter for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. They do so much great work, and there's a host of different ways to get involved within your chapter, and every state has at least one chapter within their districts, and they do everything from the walk in September to the International Survivor of Suicide Loss Day that's hosted every year in November, to events throughout the year. And so that's a resource that I like to share with people who are looking to get involved.
All right, thank you, Luann. And Stephanie, back to you. You mentioned how we're just very early here. It is just the beginning of September. What other activities or outreach or any other types of events are going to be planned throughout the month of September during Suicide Prevention Month?
I think you're going to see a lot of public awareness messaging around 988 and suicide prevention. I should also mention NAMI across the country, in addition to AFSP, another great resource. They will be doing walks. My organization, NAMI, we also do NAMI walks this month and throughout the fall. So there'll be a lot. I would say just definitely to look locally, because there are so many great organizations out there that are going to be, hosting a lot of community conversations on suicide prevention.
All right, Stephanie, I also want to ask you about the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA. That has recently been restructured. About a third of that agency's workforce is being cut. Can you tell us about the impact there, what those cuts will have on suicide prevention efforts all over the country?
Yes. So SAMHSA is the only federal agency, and they're housed within HHS, and they're the only federal agency specifically dedicated to supporting people with mental health and substance use conditions. They have contributed so much to the progress we've seen in tackling the mental health crisis. There's actually been a 24% decrease in overdose deaths last year. That they are responsible for launching 988. And there has been a plan released by HHS Secretary Kennedy that would reorganize SAMHSA, move it under a new agency that would be called the Administration for a Healthy America. At NAMI, we believe in the importance of having an agency specifically dedicated to mental health and substance use to really keep the attention on this critical need. So what we're hoping is that that this plan will not move forward. And if you want to kind of find out anything more about what's happening with HHS, our website is a great resource, NAMI.org/take action. You can get a lot of our advocacy alerts there. So yes, hopefully we won't see this plan move forward, but also it's important to keep in mind too, a lot of this work happens at the state level. So we'll also, in 988 has seen a lot of support from states. So I would expect all of that to continue.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie. Luann, how about you? Some of these federal cuts, could they have an impact on the Ponca Tribe's suicide prevention efforts?
I mean, absolutely. I, kind of alluded to it earlier a little bit when I talked about one of our current hurdles is funding loss. We are largely grant funded, and so when you're kind of looking out at projected awards, there's not as many grant opportunities because they were largely funded through SAMHSA, so a lot of the ones that we would look to. And so we'll see, I imagine, some decrease in funding, which then can trickle down into decreased services. So I think that this new restructuring plan will have some challenges if it goes through. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Luann. Even let's bring Kim Ferris into our conversation now. She is also actually in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and she's the director of behavioral health for the Oklahoma City Enden Clinic. And Kim, thank you again for joining the show today. And how about there in Oklahoma City at the Enden Clinic? Do you see an impact of federal cuts?
Oh, yeah, sure. That with we have some SAMHSA grants that we currently are under, and with the breakdown of the tribal technical assistance has impacted us on having assistance with our GONAs, which is called the Gathering of Native Americans. It's a multi-day event where we just create space for youth to engage in discussion about mental health and suicide and cultural identity. And SAMHSA has helped us in the past with the technical assistance to come and have facilitators that are experts in facilitating these GONAs lead these events in our communities. And so that's just one small way we've noticed an impact so far with the cuts.
All right. Well, tell us about some of the suicide prevention efforts that you folks are working on there at the Oklahoma City Enden Clinic.
Yes, we do a lot of trainings. We do mental health first aid, Talk Saves Lives. Those are our consistent trainings that we provide both the clinic and the community. We've also kind of launched more of a trauma-informed approach across the clinic, not just in behavioral health, that this is something our leaders have recognized that, suicide doesn't just show up in behavioral health, that it shows up across the clinic. And so everybody needs to be on board and able to identify some of those risk factors and know what to do, really just to have the conversation of talking about it. The stigma, like Luann and Rachel had mentioned earlier, that that's still a great concern, and not just with our patients, but our staff too that are not, in the behavioral health department, that can be a hard conversation to have. So we've incorporated more training for our staff as well across the clinic. And we have an integrated behavioral health team. They are embedded into the medical teams. And so every time a patient sees their primary care physician, they are assessed for suicide at that point as well too. So we've increased the assessments, and if there is a positive, that we have a therapist right there within the department that can provide more screening, safety planning, and interventions. We also have an internal process for if someone has expressed any thoughts of suicide or showing any risk factors, that across the clinic can dial an extension, and one of our integrated behavioral health therapists will respond, and it'll be a warm handoff there to address any needs at that point.
All right.
A lot of community engagement.
Yeah, it sounds like, and Kim, you mentioned risk factors. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, I'd like you to explain what some of those risk factors might be. Again, we have listeners all over the country, and a lot of them might have questions or concerns about what it takes to prevent a suicide. So again, a short break, and the phone lines are open, 1-800-996-2848. You can share any questions or comments you might have. Just pick up that phone, give us a call, 1-800-996-2848. Of course, you can always go to our social media as well, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads, and you can like, post, and comment on that, any of those forums, or just go to our website, nativeamericacalling.com, and you can comment as well. So we're going to take this short break. We'll come back, continue our conversation with Kim Ferris along with our other guests. Stay with us.
Support by the American Indian College Fund. The American Indian College Fund provides millions of dollars of scholarships to thousands of Native students every year. Tribal citizens of every age and experience are eligible. The deadline for applications is May 31st, and you can find everything you need to apply at collegefund.org. That's collegefund.org, or by phone at 800-766-FUND. Education is the answer.
You are listening to Native America Calling. Plenty of time still. If you would like to join today's conversation about suicide prevention, you can share what your community is doing to address suicide. Just call 1-800-996-2848. That number is also 1-800-99-NATIVE. You can also comment on our website and social media pages. Also, remember, if you are struggling with mental health or a person you love is struggling, call or text 988. Kim Ferris is on the line in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. She's the director of behavioral health for the Oklahoma City Indian Clinic. And Kim, you had mentioned risk factors, being able to identify risk factors or paying attention to risk factors with regard to suicide. Can you give us a little more information? What are some common risk factors that we should be aware of when it comes to suicide?
Yeah, so what we want to look out for, any kind of verbal cues, if they're talking about wanting to die or kill themselves, but paying special attention to any signs of hopelessness, feeling like they're a burden to others, or feeling trapped, those are things that we keep an eye out for, along with behavioral changes, any kind of change in their behavior, if they're withdrawing. A lot of times they will give away their possessions or start saying goodbye. Those are definitely signs that we want to pay attention to.
And then if you're in a situation where you have a relative, a loved one, and they're exhibiting those signs, they're saying things like that, hey, I want to give things away, and what's the first step? What can we do?
Well, we're really encouraged to just ask directly, are you thinking about suicide? This really does not increase the risk or likelihood that they will. It's just being very direct with the question, and listen without judgment. That's a huge thing, of just being non-judgmental, trying to understand their perspective and where they're coming from, and encourage them to seek help. that we have lots of resources, here at the clinic, and that's where when they hand off to the therapist, they'll do a safety plan with them. But even if this is a family member, get familiar with the resources in your community, because there are, like 988, that's a good way to just connect them with someone that can get them in touch with the services that they need, and do not leave them alone. That anyone at risk or that is exhibiting these signs, to take it all seriously.
Okay, I want to ask you more about the safety plans you mentioned, but before I do that, I want to go back to Luann Even with the Ponca tribe of Nebraska. And Luann, earlier in the show, we mentioned that the LGBTQ plus specific line is being shut down. Can you tell us about how that is going to impact suicide prevention efforts, not only where you are, but in other parts of Indian country as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So so over the summer that the Trevor Project, which was the kind of the Press 3 option for the 988 crisis line, lost its funding. So while it does still continue to operate its own 24-hour hotline and chat line, there's been a huge impact to the LGBTQ community by this cut. The LGBTQ community lost their kind of like specialized support for those who are struggling with suicide crises, mental health crises, and the LGBTQ population is already at a higher rate for suicide. And so losing the kind of the direct line to somebody who understands them and is able to kind of be informed on LGBTQ issues is going to have a really big impact on their mental health overall.
All right. Thank you, Luann. Stephanie, how about you? Any thoughts with regard to the shutting down of the LGBTQ plus specific hotline?
The shutting down of the LGBTQ plus youth and young adult line was something that was deeply disappointing to NAMI. We had long championed the additional funding for that specialized option, and as Luann mentioned, it did. The federal government over the summer announced that they would be eliminating that line, and it officially was ended on July 17th. And just to give you a sense of the impact of the line, looking at the data, about 10% of all contacts to 988 were for the LGBTQ plus line. But I think for anyone, any LGBTQ plus young person listening right now, just know that there are still options. We don't want you to hesitate to reach out for help. The Trevor Project is still independently operating a 24/7 hotline. And in addition to that, I've seen a few states already, namely California and Illinois, recognizing the absence of the Press 3 option now, are really beefing up their trainings of their existing crisis counselors for their main line on how to best serve LGBTQ plus youth.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie. Kim, I want to go back to you now and the safety plans. You talked earlier about possibly a person who is struggling with a suicide risk and a safety plan that can be created to assist them, to assist their family. How do those work?
So those work with, it works better if the patient or the client actually writes it themselves. And so they literally write down what their warning signs are, so they can identify within themselves if these warning signs start coming back up, like if they start withdrawing or they feel like everything is hopeless, that they know to initiate their plan. And then they write down coping strategies, and that's what we help them with, thinking about things that they can do when they start having these warning signs of deep breathing or go for a walk. They'll write down the list of names of people that they can call. So social support is very important in this plan, and working with if anybody that is suicidal or depressed, having a strong social system, so they have people that they can call, as well as professionals or hotlines, their resources. So they write down these numbers and names. And we talk about ways to make their space safer. And so if there's any guns or weapons, anything that we need to find another space for or to keep them safe. And then they'll write down reasons to live. So, I mean, this could often, I hear this a lot, where they'll have a pet that's involved. If they have a dog or a cat or some kind of pet that is dependent on them, and that's a reason to live. So them just writing this down and seeing it is effective, and that they can have this with them, that they can put into action when they need it.
All right. This is really fascinating. Like many families, my family has dealt with suicide for a number of generations. Pretty much every generation I can think of, at least one close family member has committed suicide. And do you ever have people who come in and they've thought about suicide? They've been really close to suicide, but for some reason they're able to get the support that they need, and they don't follow through, and they move on with their lives, and they regain happiness and stability. What do those people tell you, Kim? What is it that makes a difference for them in their lives?
Sure, yes. It's the people around them and the support that they have. A lot of that, it's dependent on their support, and that if they've had a family member, I mean, of course, that puts them at an increased risk as well. If they've had a family member, and even on media, seeing anybody on media that's completed suicide, that can also be a risk factor. But watching the impact it has on those around, and them feeling that and not wanting that for others. Because a lot of the patients that I see, they don't really want to die. They just don't want to live like they have been living. They don't want to feel what they've been feeling. It's too much. They're a burden. And so if they've been on the other side of that and had a family member, they see that just translates that burden or those feelings onto the family members, and they don't want that. And so I think that's what really helps them get connected, and talking about it is key.
All right. Thank you, Kim. Let's go to the phones. This is Hank, who is listening to the show in Taos, New Mexico on radio station KUNM. Hello, Hank. You're on the air.
Good morning. This is a great subject, and shout out just to you guys for providing such an awesome forum for talking about everything under the sun. I wanted to say I just went to a gathering for my brother who passed, and we celebrated his life. And one of the takeaways I got from that was to celebrate life while they're here. And so it doesn't have to be any kind of big fancy anything. Celebrate Monday. What are you having for dinner? Bring it over to my house. Let's gather and let's touch base with each other. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy or anything elaborate, but just breaking bread together. Oh my gosh, with the people that you love, you just were talking about that. And so I would say make a picnic happen this next weekend. Make a potluck happen, and make that your goal. And with just your family in general. So anybody that's feeling anything like they don't belong or they're not important, they're gonna get a touch of how built into the family they are and how they matter, and and you all will. That's the cool thing about gathering. We all get such a high from it. So I say I dare everybody that's listening, plan a little gathering. If you're going to eat fried chicken tonight, take it to someone else's house and share it with them. Do something like that, and I think that will help you stay connected. That's my 2 cents.
I think so too, Hank. Thank you. That great advice. Really appreciate you calling into the show today from Taos, New Mexico. That was Hank listening on KUNM. And Kim, I mean, listening to Hank, all I can think of is sometimes we just need to remind ourselves to reach out to the people that we care about and say, hey, I love you. How you doing? Come over to my house. Let's do something tonight. Let's gather. Sounds like that's really, really critical. That whole notion of just gaining time together and just spending time as a family or as a community.
Yes, connection and reconnection with cultural practices, has been effective, and just knowing that you're not alone, and like Hank said, that you matter.
That you matter. No. Thank you, Kim. Stephanie, I want to go back to you. And we talked earlier about some of these federal cuts and just some of the impact. And of course, there's a big shift away in the federal government from DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. And I'm wondering there at NAMI how you folks are building your programs or refining your programs or maybe pivoting in some ways to deal with this new landscape. Can you talk about that?
Happy to. There definitely has been a shift in the dialogue around DEI, but we're holding firm to our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in fact, it's probably more important than ever to make sure that we are calling out to communities that have experienced marginalization, that we know have a harder time accessing mental health care and finding mental health care that really respects and integrates their identity into it. So from our perspective, we've been emphasizing that, in our programming. I'm joining you from the national office, but there are over 600 NAMI organizations that offer support groups and mental health education classes completely free of charge in their communities. And then I can also say, just from more of a policymaking perspective too, sometimes you just have to focus on which communities too that like policymakers most connect with. Sometimes it's talking about rural healthcare access can be a great point of connection, and also then integrating connection to communities like Native American communities that may live in more rural and isolated areas. So we just have to actually keep the conversation going on all these topics.
All right, thank you. Kim, back to you. Let's talk a little bit about the state of Oklahoma. You are at the Oklahoma City Indian Clinic, but what about their statewide? Are there suicide prevention efforts or programs that you folks are partnering with in your efforts?
Yeah, we've partnered with the local, they're actually a national crisis hotline called Rainbow Youth Project, and they saw such a strong number of youngsters calling in from Oklahoma that they've created a headquarters here in Oklahoma City. So it is a crisis hotline and for our youth, and it offers free mental health counseling for the kids, and then also support for the parents whenever if the child is in the hospital or if they don't make it, that funeral services, those services, that it's a case management kind of program that they offer free of charge through different funding that they have across the United States. And so that's just been a blessing to find them and connect with them as just an additional support.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, so we're going to have to wrap up this discussion today here. A show to recognize and acknowledge Suicide Prevention Month. It is this month, September. So again, that crisis line 988, if you or someone you love is struggling, please just reach out, get help, and remember the words of our caller Hank, and just gather more. So invite somebody to dinner tonight, or go see a movie, or maybe just go take a walk somewhere with someone you care about. Just check in with them and have a good conversation. Again, strength in numbers. I think that's the message of a lot of today's show. And big thank you to our four guests who joined the conversation: Rachel Bogatz, Luann Even, Stephanie Pasternak, and Kim Ferris. And don't forget, join us again tomorrow for another riveting discussion on a timely Native American issue or topic. Until then, I'm your host, Sean Spruce. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Support for journalism that raises the awareness of child well-being to citizens and to policymakers provided by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, building a brighter future for children, families, and communities. Information at aecf.org. Support for law and justice-related programming provided by Hobbs, Strauss, Dean & Walker, LLP, a national law firm dedicated to promoting and defending tribal rights for over 40 years. More information available at hobbsstrauss.com. Support by AARP. If someone asks you to buy gift cards to pay off debt, it's a scam. Imposters will claim your Social Security number's at risk, or your utility company will stop service due to late payments, or you won the lottery and only need to pay some upfront costs. They'll say the fastest way is to buy gift cards and share the numbers on the back. Anyone who tells you to pay a debt with a gift card is a scammer. More information on gift card scams at aarp.org/giftcards.
Native America Calling is produced in the Annenberg National Native Voice Studios in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation, a Native nonprofit media organization. Funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting with support from the Public Radio Satellite Service. Music is by Brent Michael Davids. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.